Hey folks, at this stage I'm going to keep sculpting rather quickly. I'm not going to smooth out. After all, the first stage is roughing in. I think that I'm going to make some asymmetrical expression, but I want you to remember that we're always working towards the molding process. This is oil-based clay. We're going to mold it in plaster. Here's a mold. When we're finished with this, we'll pour plaster over the top of this and allow it to harden. And then we demold, that is, we take our sculpture out of it and we end up with this. It's a negative of our sculpture. Any parts that stick out of the sculpture will go into the mold. So we want to be very careful about undercuts. That is, anything that would be hidden in the molding process. Anything that goes very far underneath. I'm filling some undercuts on the side of the faces right now, making sure that I fill those spaces that you wouldn't be able to see from the very front. Are you bothered by the two different eyes, the Quasimodo? Should I dig it out and do something different? I'm not going to. Yeah, I might go ahead and break my own rules and start smoothing this a little bit. And now our fingers are always a great tool. I don't know if it's the best tool right here. But it's going to be a thing. So, if you're looking at photos or your table mates in order to find the proper anatomy for this, then you're probably going to notice that if there is a nasolabial fold, it falls into this area surrounding, it sort of surrounds or echoes the shape of the nostril a little bit. I think I'm going to need some more flesh there. And what I mean by is this fold of flesh that helps to express what's happening in the mouth. We'll have a space around the nose like that. Erg. Oh, speaking of undercuts, when we do get around to adding a little bit of an opening in the nostrils, I'll do it just now as an example. It's not overly important, but we don't have to have a deep hole. Notice that even that much of a cut causes a shadow. So, we don't have to drill a big hole in there and make this thing go so deep, because when we mold it, our plaster is going to get stuck way up there, and it's just going to break off, and it's not going to make such a good difference. It's not going to make such a difference. Besides that, if we imagine the opening as flesh surrounding that hole, it's going to look better for us anyways. There's flesh on this side, flesh on that side. So the harder clay will smooth out a little bit easier, but there is still going to be issues with smoothing. And that depends on how long you go. I'm playing with the idea of surface right now. When we're sculpting in bronze, or if you ever look at bronze statues, most bronze sculptors will create these a texture on top of their statues. So they're not trying to emulate skin. They create a sort of, well, it's almost painterly, for lack of a better word. They want you to be able to see that this is made of clay. And I think the reason is that the more you work with clay, the more joy you get from that. It's sort of like doing a painting and showing the thick paint. It's the joy, it's all about, sometimes it's just about art for art's sake. We can cause an asymmetry in these things, but if we were to do that, we could do that by moving everything together. Notice on this side, I've just squeezed everything together. The lip came up, the cheek came up, the eyes closed, and the brow comes down expressively, and then I could even exaggerate that a little bit. So in this case, there is a reason to do some asymmetry. I think that I have a sculpture I did here with an asymmetrical wink. So this one, it's you see that even as I smoothed it out, it's still, I actually added a lot of wrinkles in there. And I think that many times I like to do wrinkly faces because they're more expressive, or at least they're easier to recognize. And when we do get to the end on this one, we're going to find ways to conceal or disguise a lot of these, a lot of the imperfections. So rather than making everything perfect, we might just get in here. I'm going to push the chin over too, as if that happens. So we'll actually find ways to disguise our imperfections. I'm going to force this cheek up a little bit. Oh yeah. No, I don't know. So, on many people, even youngsters, I'll often see something that resembles like bags under their eyes. Now, though I can use it in any way I want, none of these parts are separate. So if you're going to make something odd, an odd-shaped nose, remember that that nose is going to live on the face. So we don't just throw things on there. If there's going to be bags, it's not going to be some bizarre, strange thing that we wouldn't see in some form. Think of these maybe, you can either do them realistically, oh boy, you can do these realistically, or you can do them as caricatures. So a caricature is an exaggerated expression. You know, sometimes we can even bend the nose slightly. Oh yeah. So see that? So now I have created so much movement, and by refining, I'm creating a little bit more, better shadows are going to help to define the all of the expression. I could close this further, but I still want to have a very strong shadow in the eye. This eye is no longer spherical, so I'm going to force it. You know what I mean? You see it happening? So then as I get in here and I decide that I want to start smoothing it, notice that smoothing doesn't mean that I'm going to just rub my finger over the whole thing. I'm going to decide what parts, what are flaws and what aren't. I like having extra shadow down here under the lip. He's got such a big lip. I'm not going to make it a sharp turn, but I am sort of causing it to come out a bit. So see, that looks kind of strange, doesn't it? But it sort of works in this way. Notice how far that upper lip comes out in front of that also. If I want to have one of these little divots, whatever we call these things right here under, I'm going to try to indicate that. Might be a mistake. So I'm sort of throwing those things in. You know what I mean? Jelly bean. If you're looking at your friend's face or at photos, you'll probably notice, or in a mirror for that matter, I guess, you'll probably notice that the lips are thickest at the center, and then they actually taper down to the level of the flesh out here. And so a lip is going to be much more pronounced at the center.